There was a late afternoon when the last rays of the day secretly touched the hair already streaked with grey of her. That woman, beyond 50, quietly washed dishes in the familiar kitchen. That spacious house, for dozens of years she had built up with all her youth and endurance. Yet, in the very place called the warm nest, she still often felt herself like a faint shadow, passing through the life of the man she had chosen, without ever being looked at carefully again. No one hit her, no one scolded, but the silences repeated again and again. The indifferent glances, the meals colder than words, made her heart at times dry like a season without rain. Have you ever also seen yourself like that, loving someone to the utmost? But the more you love, the more tired. The more you try to hold, the more you feel you are losing yourself. There are people not to come to walk the whole life with us, but to come so that we pay off a part of debt that the soul had carried from a previous life. Buddha teaches, meeting each other is predestined affinity, but being able to stay together, enduring each other's ugly parts, going through all unfinished pieces, to still look at each other with the eyes of one who has understood, that is karma. And if overcoming, without resentment, without clinging, without running away, without abandoning, then that is blessing. There was a person who once asked me how to know whether a marriage is blessed affinity or karmic retribution. I only smiled, then quietly said, "Please look at the wounds that relationship left in your heart. If it makes you hurt, but does not take away your compassion, then that is a sacred lesson. But if it makes you become cold, harsh, resentful, then you are letting karma lead and forgetting that you can dissolve it with light. You are not wrong when loving. You are only going through a karmic debt. And who knows, the fatigue today is exactly the sign of a blessing about to bloom. But only when you are persistent enough to go to the very end of suffering will you see the peaceful door waiting behind." In this video, we will together open the hidden truths about marriage and karmic affinity, the things not everyone dares to say. And sometimes, only until the bottom of despair, people are willing to sit down to listen, not to me, but to their own heart that has been forgotten for too long. Let us walk this journey to the end, together. I do not preach like a teacher. I sit here like one who has walked through darkness and knows that the light is always there, only that our eyes are blurred with tears. If you see yourself in the stories about to be told, please subscribe to the channel to continue with me returning inside, where love no longer makes you hurt, but begins the deepest healing. And if you are suffering because of one person, please do not quickly skip this video, because who knows, just one sentence, one small story about to be told, is already enough so that you are no longer lost among the things thought to be broken. We begin, shall we? He once thought he had married the wrong person. 20 years living together, not a single day did he feel he was truly loved. The wife in his eyes was a rude woman, rigid, not gentle, not soft. He only wished that each time he came home from work, he could hear one question of care, could see one warm gaze. But he usually only saw one cold glare, one silent, tired face, and one meal already cold. Not because of lacking fire, but because of lacking care. He once thought, or perhaps he should find another person, someone who could understand, could listen, could make him feel that he was needed. But then he still stayed. Stayed because of the children. Stayed because of the duty of husband and wife. Stayed because of something not yet named. Until the day his wife fell ill. She had liver tumor, had to undergo surgery. During the 3 months in hospital, for the first time he had to take care of everything, from washing clothes, cooking, picking up the children, to calling the doctor, running to buy medicine. He was not used to it. He was clumsy. And it was exactly in that clumsiness that he gradually realized the things she had done for the past 20 years, quietly, silently, and without a single word of credit. One day, When arranging his wife's bag in the hospital room, he saw a small notebook. The careful lines appeared clearly on each page. Today bought cough medicine for husband. This morning woke up early to wash his shirt in time for him to wear to work. Child had fever. He was angry. I kept silent to preserve harmony. This month's market money still has 200,000 left, saved for him to buy tonic. He sat there, turned page after page. No complaint, no word of blame, only small notes, but each line was a mark of love that had never been returned. His tears fell, not because his wife was in pain, but because for all those years he had never been grateful. My friend, I do not tell this to condemn that husband, also not to praise that wife, but for you and me to look back together. How many people in married life have lived together for many years, but have never truly seen each other? We look with the eyes, but not with the heart. We hear with the ears, but not listen with the soul. And then, only until the other person is weary, we realize their presence had once been so great in our life. Buddha teaches, many relationships do not break because love is gone, but because the mind still clings, karma still deep, not yet transformed. We love with emotion, but maintain with habit. Then, when emotion is no longer nourished, we begin to blame each other, resent each other, distance from each other. But deep inside, love has never extinguished, only that it is covered by disappointment, by expectation, by wounds not spoken out. Someone asked me, Master, how to know whether I should let go or should keep? I did not answer immediately. I only asked back, have you truly understood that person yet? Or are you only understanding your own pain? In the Dhammapada there is a saying, hatred cannot be dissolved by hatred. Only compassion can dissolve hatred. Likewise, wounds cannot be healed by silence, but only when one side has enough compassion to stop, to shine light into oneself, then can save that relationship, even though it is almost hopeless. The truth is, you do not lose affinity with anyone. You are only in the middle of a lesson not yet completed. You may leave, but if karma has not been cleansed, then the new person will bring you back to the exact old lesson, only with a different face, a different circumstance, but the feeling of hurt is still the same. There are people who after divorce have built a new family, thinking that they will be happier. But then, after a few years, they see themselves stepping into a loop again. Again quarrels, again hurts, again loneliness, because they brought into the new marriage the wounds not yet healed, the resentments not yet released, and the wrong ways of loving. Buddha does not force us to stay with anyone, but Buddha teaches, if you have not resolved with the old person, you will have to learn that same lesson again until your heart no longer resents, no longer blames, only has compassion. Therefore, if today you are standing at the threshold of separation, please do not decide hastily. Give yourself a silence. Look back at that person with a mind without judgment. Maybe that person was wrong, but maybe you also once hurt them in unconscious ways. Maybe both once loved, only that did not know how to keep. Maybe you are not wrong for loving, but also not yet enough understanding to love rightly. You do not need to endure to prove you have blessing, but if karma is still there, then your turning away may not yet be liberation. Sometimes it is only another beginning for the same pains in a new chapter of life. Therefore, please do not abandon a person just because you are tired. Please examine again. Are you really tired because of that person, or tired because of your own expectations not yet answered? You are not out of affinity. You are only not yet out of karma. And if it is karma, then do not escape. Please cultivate, to transform. Please bow to Buddha, to see your heart soften. Please write an unsent letter, to make your heart peaceful. Please stop hoping that the other person will change, and begin to change the way you see them. And if you can do it, you will see. That person may still be the same, but you are different. And only when you are different, karma dissolves. Blessing arrives. And you know, there are relationships in this life, the more painful they are, the harder they are to leave. Not because still in love, but because the soul is still entangled with an invisible thread called karma. Karma is not something mystical or far away. Karma, in the simplest meaning, is the result of what we have once done, once thought, once spoken, once held. Sometimes it is from this life, sometimes it is from another life, but when it ripens, it will bear fruit. And suffering is one of the ways karma comes to knock on the door. Do you notice? When a person steps into your life, bringing much love, but at the same time making you sorrowful, hurt, tormented, then very likely that is not just simple love, but karmic fate. That means you once owed them, or they once owed you, or both bring to each other a portion of karma to be repaid, a lesson to be learned, a door to be opened. But sadly, we often walk away right when karma manifests, when that person begins to grow cold, when the words begin to become sharp, when the silences stretch long like an abyss. We think that is the sign of the end of affinity. We assume that when loving someone but they are no longer as before, then we should let go and we leave. But we forget. Buddha teaches that karma does not dissolve when we turn our back. It only dissolves when we turn inward. There was a woman who came to see me in a Dharma talk. She said, "I have been married for 25 years, took care of him fully, gave birth to 2 children, built the house, managed everything. But in the last 5 years, I no longer feel anything for him, no joy, no sadness, no anger, only feel myself empty. I want a divorce. But every time I put the pen to sign, I feel a sting in the chest." I did not say she should stay or should go. I only asked, "Can you forgive him?" She was surprised. "I have nothing to forgive. He did not cheat, did not beat, did not curse." I asked back, "Then, during those 25 years, was there ever a time you felt hurt because of his indifference? Was there ever a time you cried alone? Was there ever a time you wished for a word of thanks?" She was silent, and then she cried, not because of her husband, but because she realized that she herself had hidden the sadness for too long, and it was that smoldering sadness that made her empty. Many relationships do not die because of betrayal, but die because of accumulation, because of times not being listened to, because of words that seemed harmless but cut into the heart, because of small things not being healed, accumulating into a crack that grows wider. And finally, we no longer see the other as hateful or pitiable, but as nothing at all, an indifference that chills. But my friend, that indifference is not necessarily the end. Sometimes it is only a bell of awakening, that you are straying away from yourself, that you need to return, to ask again, did I come here to love or to win? Many of us step into marriage with expectations to be understood, to be shared, to be cherished. But when life sweeps us away, those expectations are not fulfilled, and we are disappointed. From disappointment, we give rise to blame. From blame, we create new karma, with heavy words, with the silence of punishment, with the way of withdrawing from common feelings. Every time you endure in suffering, you accumulate karma. Every time you scold in pain, you sow karma. And every time you walk away when not truly forgiving, you keep karma. There was an old couple. They lived together more than 50 years. He was gruff, hot-tempered, while she was gentle, patient. For many years, she endured many things, but did not resent. When asked, she smiled and said, "He is not bad. He just has never been loved enough by anyone to understand where he is wrong. I am here to be the last person still gentle enough to let him know he can still be loved." Hearing that sentence, I burst into tears, because I knew not everyone is cultivated enough to do that. Not everyone has enough blessing to have someone stay when oneself is the one hurting them the most. You do not need to be a noble person, but you need to understand, if you separate when your heart still resents, then you have not finished the lesson. If you let go in anger, then you are still escaping karma. And if you leave with a heart not yet healed, you will repeat everything with the next person. The truth is, karma does not come to make you suffer. It comes so that you look back, realize, and let go. Not to let go of the other person, but to let go of expectations, let go of judgment, let go of the ego, so that love can return, as in the beginning, pure, simple, and unconditional. If today you are standing between two paths, please pause for a moment, not to turn back, not to step away, but to look down at your own steps. How long has it been since you last truly talked to that person with real presence? How long has it been since you last looked at them with the eyes of gratitude? How long has it been since you only lived beside them, but no longer lived with them? If you do not know where to start again, then start with one recitation of Buddha's name. Recite while cooking rice. Recite when folding clothes for them. Recite when seeing them grumbling. Do not hope they will change. Let the energy of compassion in you change the way you see them. And when you see them differently, you will see another person also beginning to blossom within them. My dear friend, I do not tell you that you must stay, but before leaving, be sure that you have completed your own lesson, so that one day, whether you meet again or not, you will no longer feel heavy, no longer regret, no longer blame. Only have a gentle smile, like someone who has gone through storms and finally understands. No one truly hurts me, except the expectations unfulfilled in my own heart. You have not ended your destiny. You are only being invited to look back, to see what the old karma is wanting to remind you. And only when you are willing to listen from a very deep place within the mind, then happiness can find its way back. 1. Suffering because of not understanding, but thinking it is the end of love. The husband often complains that the wife is no longer as before, but the wife cries, "You have never understood me from the beginning." The deepest pain is not when people no longer love each other, but when still caring, yet no longer having the ability to understand. Each person lives in a separate world, a separate language, a separate fatigue that no one can speak out in words. The Buddha teaches, love must go together with understanding. If not understanding, love will become a burden. Every word, every action is misinterpreted. Then we blame that the other has changed, but in fact, we have never understood them enough to recognize they have always been like that. To dissolve, practice listening with presence instead of judging. Ask each other more, are you tired? Instead of, why are you always frowning like that? A person who knows how to listen with mindfulness can save a whole marriage from an unnecessary breakdown. 2. Suffering because of differences in temperament. One is introverted, one is extroverted. There is a wife who likes meditation, likes quiet, likes sitting alone reading books, listening to Dharma talks. But the husband prefers friends, drinking, noise. She is seen as out of place, strange in her own house. Each person is a different piece of karma. One likes to turn inward, one likes to turn outward. One seeks light in silence, one seeks joy in sound. No one is wrong, but if there is no compassion and understanding, they will see each other as two opposite worlds and then stray away from each other. The Buddha teaches, each sentient being is a result of countless causes and conditions. Everyone is walking their own path to return to their true nature. Therefore, do not force anyone to be like you, but learn how to accompany indifference. Love is when two people know how to walk together, even though the two paths sometimes are very far apart. 3. Suffering because of attachment. The more loving, the more wanting to possess. There is a husband who loves his wife so much that he even becomes jealous of the child. When the wife hugs the child, he feels that it is coldness toward him. When the wife smiles and talks with colleagues, he feels that it is betrayal. Loving but no longer letting the other have freedom, then that love has become chains. The Buddha teaches, the root of suffering is craving, that is attachment. Every time we see that person as ours, belonging to us, then every action of theirs is compared to our own desires. Without freedom, then love is no longer nurturing, but suffocating. Practice loving without holding. Let the other be themselves, yet still know that they will not leave. Sometimes, loving is to step back a little, so that the other can still breathe. 4. Suffering because of past wounds not healed, carrying them into present life. A man was once betrayed. When he married the second wife, a person very sincere and loving him, he still doubted. Every time she put on makeup, he frowned. Every time she answered a phone call, he questioned anxiously. No matter how much she tried, he still looked at her through the shadow of the former one. Many people do not live in the present, but live in old wounds. They love the new person, but fear the past will repeat. They want peace, but dare not let go of defenses. And then they unintentionally hurt exactly the one who loves them the most. The Buddha teaches, if you do not heal, you will use the present person to punish the one who already left. And that is unfair. Unfair to the new person and unfair to yourself. To move forward, you must stop. Look inward. Recognize how much resentment you are still holding. Write it down. Recite sutras. Meditate. Ask for a teacher's guidance. You must see clearly, you are here, not in that past moment anymore. And the person standing before you is not the one who hurt you, but is a person who is present, wanting to love you with all sincerity. 5. Suffering because of lacking the light of the Buddha's Dharma, living by old karma, without a new mind. A wife quietly went to the temple. She did not say anything to her husband. Every morning, she woke up early to cook, recite the Buddha's name, chant sutras. She did not preach Dharma, nor did she advise her husband to change. She only lived with a quietly compassionate heart. 3 years later, her husband started quietly following his wife to the temple. One day, he stood before the Buddha statue, with eyes wet. He said, I once thought you were strange, but now I see a person living gently, peacefully like you. Surely cannot be wrong. The Buddha teaches, Dharma does not need to be preached. Dharma needs to be lived. And when one person in the house truly practices, not by mouth, but by body, the whole family will transform karma. The light of Dharma does not come from books, but comes from practice. From one Buddha recitation when the other gets angry. From one bow of repentance when oneself bursts out. From one gentle reminder in the heart, may I not respond with hatred, but with compassion. The miracle lies there, where you do not need to change anyone, only need to change your own mind. She once was a strong woman, but in love, she was gentle. She went out in the rain to look for her husband every time he was drunk. She skipped meals, saving every penny to raise the child's schooling. She sat burning incense alone in the night, whispering the chant, Namo Amitabha Buddha, as a way to keep herself from collapsing. Then one day, she discovered she had cancer, a late stage. At that time, her husband was passionately in love with another woman. She did not cry. She did not get angry. She did not make a big scene. She only quietly tidied up, preparing funeral things for herself. Every night, she recited the great compassion mantra, not praying to live, not praying for him to come back, only praying that her heart had enough compassion to not resent. A year later, she was very weak. But one morning, her husband returned. He knelt beside the sickbed, crying like a child. He said, "You are the only one who ever loved me like that." And I did not realize. My dear friend, there are forgivenesses that do not need to be spoken in words. There are loves, not noisy, but enough to cleanse an entire soul. She did not win her husband back with reasoning. She did not break down, nor did she fight. She transformed, not to keep the man, but to keep her heart from resentment. And sometimes that is the only way to save another life, without a drop of blood spilled. My friend, in the whole life of being human, perhaps each of us has once suffered because of one person. Sometimes it is the one we love the most. Sometimes it is the one who lives with us the longest. And it is also they who make us hurt the deepest. Some people think that is destiny. Some people think it is because they are foolish. But if listening to the Buddha's teaching, we will see one thing: nothing that comes in life is without cause. Suffering is not because you chose the wrong person. Suffering is because you are carrying a part of karma that you once planted. Karma is what was done. Blessing is what is being harvested. But in order to harvest blessing, one must go through pain, without resentment, without anger, without blaming. Karma is not a punishment, but is the door inviting us to awaken. In many encounters, I have heard marriage stories that seemed impossible to save, yet in the end still blossomed, not because the other person changed, but because one person was willing to sit down, to practice, to transform oneself first. A woman shared with me in silence, "I once wanted to divorce. I once even wrote the petition already. But one night, I dreamed of my mother. She had passed away long ago, telling me, 'If you leave at this time, the karma is still there. You cannot wash it away by escaping.' Waking up, she did not leave anymore. But she also did not continue the same as before. She began chanting sutras, bowing to the Buddha every morning, reciting the name of Bodhisattva, Avalokitesvara, when doing housework, not praying for her husband to change, only praying for her own mind to be peaceful. 3 months later, the husband, originally rude, hot-tempered, began to be silent more often. 1 year later, he began going to the temple following his wife. She did not try to save her husband. She only saved herself, with compassion and awakening. And from there, the other was given dedication. There is something very wondrous in the Buddha's teaching. Only one person in the house needs to practice, and the whole family is given dedication. Because energy is something that does not need to be spoken, yet still spreads. One person silently reciting Buddha's name can soften even the stony hearts around them, not by preaching words, but by silent presence that has been purified through suffering, through practice, through patience. Have you ever noticed? There are houses where just stepping inside, we already feel peace. There are people where just by sitting beside them, we already want to cry, because they are radiating a very real energy, a presence that has been cleansed through suffering, through practice, through endurance. Another friend told me, "My wife and I used to be like enemies. For 7 years, we only talked when we needed to argue. But then one day, I could not stand it anymore. Not because I hated her, but because I was afraid that I would become a person I could not recognize. So I went to the temple. I learned meditation. I did not hope for anything to change. I only wanted not to hurt anymore. 1 year later, I realized my wife began to be different, no longer arguing when I was silent, no longer avoiding when I spoke gently. I asked, 'Do you feel your family has been saved yet?' He smiled. 'Yes, saved from the moment I stopped trying to save.' You see, transforming karma is not something lofty. It begins from very small things. A gentler word, one bow to the Buddha instead of reacting, one day without complaining, one meal without resentment. Those things seem small, but when done with mindfulness, they create a new karma, a wholesome karma, another cycle of cause and effect, where you no longer repeat old mistakes, but begin to plant a seed of blessing. Transforming karma is not about changing the person, but is about changing the mind. Someone told me, I have changed 3 people already, yet I am still suffering. I think maybe in this life I have no fate to be happy. I looked at her for a long time and then said, it is not that you have no fate, but that you have not yet been willing to learn the lesson that was sent from the first person. If the lesson is to let go of attachment, but we keep attaching, then the next person will also make us hurt. If the lesson is to forgive, but we keep resenting, then the next person will also make us choke. No one makes you suffer. They are only the ones sent to remind you that it is time to transform already. In a Dharma talk, I once said, it does not need both to practice. Only one person with enough mind is enough to open the door for the light. Just like in a dark room, it does not need 100 candles, only one candle being lit, and the whole room is less dark. And if you are the more awake one in the relationship, then be that candle. Do not blame the other for not understanding the Dharma yet. Do not wait for them to change before you start to practice. Go first. Be the one to sow. Then blessings will bloom. Start from a very small thing. Every morning, bow to the Buddha once and dedicate it to that person. When they get angry, you just silently recite one sentence. Please let me not return with hatred, but with compassion. When you see them silent, do not be resentful. Just quietly light an incense stick, offer a bowl of rice, and remember why you once chose that person. No one is born perfect, but can become better if beside them there is a person who practices. One day, you will realize, it turns out, you did not marry the wrong person, but married the right person to learn the right lesson. And when you finish learning, you no longer blame them. You only feel grateful, because thanks to them, you transformed a very heavy karma in your consciousness. Thanks to them, you know how to practice. Thanks to them, you learned love that no longer depends, no longer hurts, no longer suffers. The Buddha does not force you to endure for a lifetime, but the Buddha teaches, if your heart has not forgiven, then you are still carrying that burden forever, no matter how many paths you change. Therefore, if today you feel tired, do not hurry to leave. Also, do not force yourself to stay because of habit. Pause and ask, what lesson am I learning in this relationship? The answer may bring you to a very strange place where you stop resenting and begin to be grateful. And when you can thank the one who made you hurt, that is when you have successfully transformed karma. Do you know, sometimes the person you want to leave the most is the only one who can help you cleanse a part of the deepest karma in your consciousness. Not because they are good, not because they deserve it, but because their very presence in every clash, every reaction, every wound has exposed the deepest things inside you that normally you do not see. There are people who only when living in a marriage full of conflicts, they then see themselves selfish, stubborn, or weak to such extent. And if they dare to face, dare to accept, dare to learn how to transform from those very wounds, then they not only save the marriage, but also save themselves from the repeating cycle of karmic patterns. A woman once told me, I used to blame my husband very much. But now, after 3 years of practice, I am grateful to him. If back then he had not been cold, I would not have learned how to love myself. If he had not betrayed, I would not have known the strength of forgiveness. And if he had not turned away, I would not have returned to the Dharma. You see, karma, if not transformed, is chains. But when transformed, it becomes a door leading us to the light. Transforming karma is not erasing the past, nor is it forcing others to change, but it is cleansing the reactive mind within yourself. In the old days, there was a woman often scolded by her husband. She often came to the Buddha, complaining very much. One day, after she had just finished speaking, the Buddha asked, "If someone offers you a gift, but you do not accept, then whose is that gift?" She replied, "It belongs to the one who brought it." The Buddha said, "In the same way, if someone brings to you resentment, anger, but your mind does not accept, then all that resentment belongs to them. Why must you take it home, embrace it, and make yourself suffer?" From that day, she began to learn how to keep the silence in her heart. Even if her husband spoke harshly, she did not respond with hatred. After a while, the husband realized the strange change. He began to soften. Then, one day, he quietly went to the temple with his wife. Karma, when not continued to be sown, will naturally dissolve. Resentment, when not nourished, will naturally fade. Suffering, when illuminated by compassion, will become blessing. My friend, if today you are suffering because of someone, please do not think that it is the end. It may be. That is only the starting point of a very great journey. The journey of becoming the most beautiful version of yourself, through things that seem unbearable. No pain is meaningless if you are willing to see it with the eyes of awakening. No marriage is beyond rescue if one of the two is willing to practice. No soul is too barren if you patiently water it every day with light. I have met many people. They once suffered like you, even more painfully, but they stepped through, not thanks to luck, but thanks to practice, not thanks to the other changing, but because they themselves changed. From the way of thinking, from the way of seeing, from every morning being willing to wake up earlier to bow to the Buddha, recite sutras, chant the name of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, and little by little, the wind changes direction. Little by little, blessings bloom. I know, in your heart, there are still many doubts, whether I can do it or not, whether the other will return to mindfulness or not, whether this path is too long, too lonely. I do not dare promise that everything will change quickly, but I dare to be sure of one thing. If you begin from today, begin from within, begin with a truly wholesome aspiration, then you will change the very karmic force in your relationship. Transforming karma is the path of courage. Courage is not to argue back or to try to win, but it is the courage to stay, but without resentment, to forgive, but not weak, to love, but without attachment. And the most miraculous thing is, when you have gone deep enough inside, you will no longer wish the other to change. You will only see your heart peaceful enough not to be drowned by old things anymore, and exactly then, the other may naturally change, or not. But you have already changed. You have already become a free person, not because of leaving, but because you have cleansed the chains inside. I forever remember a saying of an old mother. In the past, I scolded him constantly. I thought he was a karmic obstacle. Later, when I practiced, I then knew he was the biggest mirror for me to see the karma lying right in my own heart. Sometimes, the one who makes us suffer the most is exactly the brightest mirror, because if you live beside a gentle person, kind, loving you wholeheartedly, maybe you will never discover that inside yourself there are still too many demands, too many calculations, too many cravings to be loved in the way you want. Only when the other does, invite you to step out of the role of victim, to see that you are the one continuing to nourish karmic force, or quietly transforming it. Begin from the smallest things. A deep breath before saying bitter words. A moment of silence when the other is angry. A meal cooked in mindfulness instead of reproach. An early morning waking up, sitting quietly chanting the Buddha's name, not hoping for anything, only to calm your heart. Those small things, repeated again and again, are exactly the way you cleanse each layer of karmic dust that you and the other have unintentionally accumulated through many years, many lives. Someone asked me, if only I practice and the other does not change, then what? I only smiled, because that person has not yet understood one thing. When you practice, truly practice, you no longer care whether the other changes or not, because you yourself have already changed. Before, you wanted that person to understand you, to love you, to listen to you. Now you only want to let go of the resentment in your heart. Before, you cried because they did not care. Now you are joyful because you are taking care of yourself again. And wondrously, when you no longer wish others to change, they begin to change, because the energy in the house is already different, because you no longer emit the frequency of bitterness, of hurt, but of compassion and quietness. Dear friend, if today you feel this path of practice is too quiet, too long, please do not give up, because as long as you keep going, just one more step, you will begin to see the light. Not the light at the end of the road, but the light inside yourself, the light that was once covered by the dust of afflictions, now being cleaned by each drop of awakened tears. I know you have once been very hurt, but my friend, karma is born from delusion, but blessings are born from clarity. Every time you choose silence instead of quarrel, you are planting a seed of blessing. Every time you choose forgiveness instead of reproach, you are cutting off a link of karma. Every time you choose to return to mindfulness instead of resentment, you are saving not only yourself, but also your loved ones and descendants. In the Dhammapada there is a saying, winning 1,000 armies on the battlefield is not equal to conquering yourself. And I believe the most courageous person is not the one who argues well, but the one who dares to look back at their own mind every day. You may not be good at arguments, not study much Dharma, but as long as you live with a heart that knows how to listen, you are already a true practitioner. And if in a family there is one such person, then the whole family will be directed. No need for the whole family to practice. Only one person needs to be bright enough, then the energy is strong enough to transform the entire lineage. At this moment, I want to give a very deep word to those who have once thought, I no longer have any way to save this marriage. My friend, do not try to save a marriage. Please save your own heart first, because when your heart is healed, you will know how to let go, how to hold, how to love, how to stop at the right time. Not everyone who comes beside you is to stay, but if that person is still beside you today, then at least they are still a part of your merit lesson. And if it is already a blessing, then please learn to cherish in mindfulness, not to struggle in delusion. I would like to end this section with a sentence that I always remind myself. As long as the mind is still bright, then there is no karma that cannot be transformed. As long as the heart is still compassionate, then there is no suffering that cannot be turned into blessing. We will continue in part 5, where I will walk with you into concrete practices to see that compassion is not theory, but a real way of living right in each moment of daily life, right in each breath of suffering, and still keeping the light. Are you ready? If yes, let us continue walking together. Light as a sigh. After long days that have cried enough already, someone once asked me, I have practiced already, but why is my husband still the same? I have recited the Buddha's name already, but I am still angry. Is it that I am practicing wrongly? I only quietly looked into those eyes that had reddened because of many years of swallowing tears inside, and said one very gentle thing: practice is not to make the other person change, but is to make yourself suffer less, bright enough, cool enough to look at them with eyes of compassion. Marriage is not a place for winning or losing, but is the very first practice hall of each layperson. It is the place where every anger, every word, every glance can become a test of practice, if we are mindful. In this section, I do not speak of lofty things. I only wish to share 3 simple practices. Anyone can begin. No need to go to the temple, no need to preach the Dharma, but only need to have a small corner in the house. Amala, a heart that wants to cleanse. Step 1. Recite the Buddha's name daily. Call the name of your life partner in the dedication. Reciting the Buddha's name, everyone knows it is good. But if you only recite for yourself, then that merit has a limit. But if in each recitation, you gently call the name of the one you once resented, once suffered because of them, then that recitation becomes the light of karmic release. Do not expect that person will change because you recite the Buddha's name, but please believe that when you have enough goodness in your heart to call their name in every prayer, then your own heart will be the first to change. There are nights. I saw a wife sitting on the balcony, her hand turning the beads, her mouth reciting Namo Amitabha Buddha, then softly adding, I dedicate this for my husband, the one I once was very angry at, but now I only wish for him to be at peace. No need for florid words, no need for formal rules, only need sincerity, reciting like that. A little each day, you will see your heart becoming cooler. No resentment can remain harsh under the light of the Buddha's name. Step 2. Prostrate in repentance instead of arguing. There are times we want to speak. Speak to vent anger. Speak so the other person understands. Speak to prove that we are right. But the more we speak, the more we hurt. The more we explain, the more we become distant. I once suggested to a husband, every time you want to raise your voice, please go to the back of the house and prostrate 10 times. No need to beg anyone, just prostrate, to see that you also once made others suffer. He smiled sadly. Can prostrating really remove my anger? I did not answer. But a month later, he came back and said, I did not lose my anger right away. But after 10 prostrations, I no longer wanted to hurt my wife. Repentance is not to admit fault to be punished, but is to return to oneself, to clearly see the mistake. So from that, not sow more suffering into others' lives. You may not understand all the words of the sutra, but if you are willing to kneel down, prostrate 10 times whenever your heart rises with waves, then you are truly practicing. Each prostration is one time letting go of arrogance. Each prostration is one bow for love to grow a little more. Step 3. Write a letter not sent. Send it to the karmic consciousness you are holding. There are things we cannot say, because if spoken, it will hurt. There are pains no one can understand. Only we ourselves know. Instead of swallowing inside, instead of storing it, please write it out. Write a letter. No need to send to anyone. Only send it to the very part of consciousness that is bleeding inside your heart. Please call that person's name. Tell all the things you once endured, the hurt, the pain, the silence. Then at the end of the letter, do not ask for anything. Just say, I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to be at peace. Someone asked me, writing like that, is it useful or not? I replied, writing it out is you bringing karma onto the paper, and once it has been brought out, then you no longer hold it in your heart. After finishing writing, please burn the letter. Dedicate by one Buddha's name, recitation. Do not keep it, and do not hope the other person understands. Only need you to understand that you have already begun liberation. Practice at home, no need to wait for enough conditions to begin, but is to begin from very small things. One recitation of Buddha's name, calling the name of the one you once resented. One prostration of repentance, instead of one time wanting to argue, one letter not sent. Instead of hundreds of thousands of words that cannot be spoken, just that, But if you do it consistently, do it sincerely, then not long after you will see you are no longer the same as the you of the days of suffering. You have changed, and the other person will also change. Not because you forced them to change, but because the light inside you is big enough to shine. The way for even the lost one. We will together step forward in part 6, where I will tell you a truly beautiful story. A wife who once suffered because of her husband for 20 years transformed the whole family only by 3 simple practices. And you will see, Buddha Dharma, if brought into life, does not only save one person, but can save an entire lifetime. See you there. Where the story begins is also where a new door is opening. There was one late afternoon at the end of the year, in a small temple in the suburban area. I sat next to a woman over 40. She held in her hand an old rosary. Her face was quiet like the surface of a lake after a storm, and she told me a love story that had no ending, but had a rebirth. She once loved him with everything that a wife could give, taking care of every meal, giving up every sleep, saving every coin, but he always felt it was lacking. Not enough love, not enough beauty, not enough understanding. Each day together was a silent competition. Who was wrong? Who was right? Who sacrificed more? Who was the one that should be loved more? Then one day, she collapsed. Not because he left, but because she realized she had never loved herself. That was the very first morning she sat down, bowing to the Buddha, not to pray that he would come back, but to bow for herself. A woman who for so many years exchanged her whole life, but forgot that she too was a being that needed to be loved. She told me, at that time, I no longer prayed for him to change. I only prayed that I would be peaceful enough not to turn love into a battle. And from then, she began to practice. Every morning, bow 10 times. Every evening, recite 1 round of the rosary. Dedicate to him, not to make him come back, but to release all resentments in her heart. Strangely, when she stopped demanding, then he began to look back. When she no longer used tears to beg, but used silence to dedicate, then that once careless man gradually became a man who knew how to bow his head to apologize. Love, it turned out, did not disappear. It only became transparent when no longer stained by ego. The greatest awakening in a marriage is not when both change at the same time, but is when one person is awake enough not to turn old karma into new resentment. It is when one person dares to stop, lets go of the cycle of hurt, to lead both out of the invisible circle of suffering. I have met many couples like that, some divorced and then returned, not because they still loved, but because they had learned a new way to love. A love that was no longer, you must be as I want, but was, I understand what you have gone through. Some lived together but were silent like strangers. Then one day, just because of one Dharma talk, both looked at each other like the first time and began again, with an eye that knew compassion, not demands anymore. The one who practices in love is not the one who meditates to escape suffering, but is the one who dares to sit in the middle of anger, to look directly at the wound they are carrying and not throw it onto the other person. Love, when already awake, does not need many words. One bowl of rice cooked in mindfulness, one look without judgment, one hand-holding without the purpose of possession. All are Buddha Dharma living in everyday life. Many people ask me how to know that I have loved in the right way. I only smile. When you no longer feel suffering, but feel your heart becoming brighter, becoming lighter, becoming more grateful, then that is the sign of a love that has the light of mindfulness. Mindfulness is not breaking up, but is breaking up with resentment. It is not abandoning the other person, but is abandoning the small ego that once forced the other person to fill it up. Do you know, in an old sutra, the Buddha once taught, if it cannot be transformed, then every relationship is repeating karma. But if it is transformed successfully, then karma becomes blessing. I have seen women who once cried out all their tears because of a cheating husband, after a few years of mantra, reciting, bowing repentance, their hearts shone like a candle. Not because the husband came back, but because they had become people who no longer depended on anyone to live. I have seen men who once destroyed their marriage with their own hands. Then when their mother passed away, he found in that cold hand an old rosary worn smooth because she recited for him every night. He burst into tears, and from that day he returned to the path, silently, humbly, no one knew. Buddha Dharma is not something lofty in temples. Buddha Dharma lives in every small action. When you choose silence instead of attacking, choose patience instead of giving up, choose to look at the other with the light of understanding instead of the darkness of anger. Love is not wrong. Wrong is the way we love. We're not healed enough. And when you begin to love with a heart that has understood, suffering, has gone through resentment, then you no longer love to be loved, but love to walk together. To love without suffering is to love in mindfulness, and to love like that is truly a form of practice. How many times in life have you asked yourself, why do I love with all my heart, but still not happy? That question is not to blame anyone, but to invite you to look back, whether that love arose from gratitude or from fear. Many of us love as if clinging to each other to cover up the empty spaces in the heart, to not feel lonely, to feel needed, to feel loved, to feel important. But do you know, love that begins from fear will sooner or later end in brokenness, while love that arises from a bright mind does not need to be held but still remains, does not need resentment but still has peace. I once met an old lady, 82 years old, living with her husband who had lost memory for many years. Every morning, she still cooked porridge, fed him spoon by spoon, wiped every stain on his shirt. Someone asked, "He no longer knows who you are. Why do you still take care like that?" She smiled, "Because I know who I am, and I am taking care of a part of fate that I once owed." She does not love to be responded. She loves because she has grown enough to see. Loving is also a way of practice. It is an opportunity to cleanse what is not yet tolerant in her own self. When love becomes companionship, then you will stop needing control. You will no longer force that person to follow you, no longer hurt if they do not do what you want, because you already understand. They are they, you are you. And fate, if enough, will stay by itself. A friend once told me, "I realized I was wrong when I kept demanding him to understand me, while I had not yet understood myself." That sentence I remember forever. We keep tiringly demanding another person to play the full role of a doctor healing the inner soul, while our own self is still full of wounds not yet healed. But true love does not require anyone to be perfect, but is to grow together, to heal together. Do you remember the last time you held that person's hand, not to pull them towards you, but to silently transmit a blessing? Do you remember the last time you looked at that person, not to reproach, but to say, "Thank you for coming and giving me a chance to cleanse myself through every pain"? That is exactly the light of awakening. When our mind is bright, then every relationship will no longer be a shackle, but a bridge that takes us from suffering to understanding, a bridge connecting from selfishness to compassion, a bridge connecting from a small ego to a heart that knows how to love all. Love, when already awakened, is no longer two people confronting, but two souls walking together through storms while still keeping one flame. The other person is no longer mine. They are a companion, coming at the right time so that we can see the things we need to see. Maybe they will stay, maybe they will leave, but the lesson is still there, silent like breath, and bright like a lamp in the night. One day, you will sit in meditation, in a quiet room, Hear a bell sound echo through the window, and your heart suddenly feels light. Because you know you no longer resent, no longer fear losing, no longer wait for anything anymore. You are present, you are living, you are fulfilled. And if someone asks you at that moment, do you still love that person? You will smile. Love, but no longer possession. Love, like loving a flower. The flower may bloom, may fade, but the fragrance has already seeped into the heart. There was a woman, 30 years old, once sitting curled up in a small room. Next to her was the divorce paper, and eyes already dry from crying too much. She had once loved, once hoped, once thought that her marriage would be the final shelter. But then, betrayal came like a cold knife, cutting off all trust. The husband she had loved for 10 years went with another person, light as footsteps, leaving a party where one no longer felt joy. At that time she thought she could not continue living. She had once begged, once clung, once blamed heaven for being unfair, for letting her love so much, but receive such a painful ending. But then, a friend brought her to a meditation session. In that room, no one asked her what pain she had. No one told her to forget. Only there were breaths, steady and deep. She heard the teacher say one sentence: "Do not try to step over suffering. Walk with it, and you will see it does not stay forever." From that day, she began the healing journey, slow and silent. Every morning she woke early, lit an incense stick, recited Buddha's name. Every night she wrote a letter to herself, not to blame, but to embrace. She no longer masked, "Why did that person leave me?" but began to ask, "How can I no longer resent?" Time flows like water over stone. 5 years later, she still lived alone. But that room now was full of light, had fresh flowers, had wind chimes, had the scent of warm tea. The woman of the past who had silently collapsed now knew how to sit and breathe with herself, knew how to smile when looking out the window, knew how to say thank you when thinking of the past. And then, one day, when she no longer hoped to meet anyone, no longer needed anyone to come to make her whole again, that person appeared, a man who had once been broken, but no longer carried wounds. He did not need to ask much, nor speak flowery words, but in his eyes was presence, was stillness, was a sky of peace she had once dreamed of. They did not need promises, did not hurry, simply being together, like two companions, walking step by step, slowly but steadily. Many people ask, how to know that I have met the right person? The answer is when you no longer fear losing them, when you do not need them to fill the emptiness, but they come like a cool breeze. You are already peaceful enough to receive. That person does not come to change your life. They come when you have already changed yourself. That is the deepest truth of blessed destiny. Blessing does not come from changing people, but comes from changing the mind. When your mind is bright, you will naturally attract pure things. When your heart is full of gratitude, you will meet one who knows how to cherish. There are people who spend their whole life chasing after a love, changing from one person to another, only to finally touch the same pain. Emptiness, hurt, not enough. But when you stop, turn inward, heal the child who is crying inside yourself, then even if the other person has not come, you already see yourself as whole. No one can save you if you do not save yourself first. No one can fill you if you do not learn to embrace your old wounds yourself. No one can bring blessed destiny if you do not already have enough blessing from within consciousness. Therefore, do not rush to love when the heart is still torn. Do not hope for someone to heal when you have not yet stitched back your old wound. I write these things not as advice, but as someone who has once gone through and turned back to look. Seeing myself in the past, also once panicked in the middle of pain, also once clung to a hand that had withdrawn, also once thought losing one person was losing the whole world. But you know, when you learn the way to sit down, breathe deeply, and no longer run away from pain, you will see the world did not leave you. Only you had once left yourself. And when you return, everything will be different. Love will be a gift, no longer an escape. That person, if they come, will no longer make you tremble in fear, but will help you be more still. Believe that one day, true blessed destiny will come, not for you to cling, but for you to accompany, not for you to sacrifice until exhaustion, but for you to bloom together in peace. And if you ask, when will that person come? Then the answer is, when you no longer ask anymore. Because at that moment, you have already met yourself. And that is the most important person that you need to wait for. Namo Amitabha Buddha. Perhaps, after everything that has been told, has been remembered, has been cried, you will sit down, alone. Like that girl of years ago who once thought she could not step through the pain, who once thought that a love lost was the loss of an entire life. But no, you have lost nothing at all. You are only letting go of the things that are no longer true to your soul. You are only learning a great lesson, that love is not for clinging, but for understanding, then releasing, then growing. How many times have you asked, why did that person leave? Why, after so much love, are you the one most deeply hurt? Why are you so good, but happiness does not stay with you? Perhaps there is no answer, but there is one thing certain. You deserve a love that does not hurt you. No one comes into your life by accident. That person comes for you to recognize the part of yourself still weak, for you to see you once needed someone so much that you lost yourself, for you to hurt and learn the way to resurrect, for you to break and know how to embrace the pieces of your heart. Have you gone through that journey yet? Or are you still lost in the old question, why did they abandon me? If you still are, then this is the time you need to look back, not to blame, but to forgive, not for the other person, but for yourself. Try, just once, to forgive those times you were too naive, to forgive those nights you cried out all your tears for someone no longer worthy, to forgive those days you lost yourself just to keep something that did not belong. Forgive, not to forget, but to not resent anymore. Because when your heart still resents, then even if the new person is so good, you will still look at them through the old wound. Even if they love you truly, you will still doubt the same way you were once abandoned. The heart not yet healed, then blessing will not come. The heart still resents, then any destiny will turn into karma. So if you are waiting for another love, another person, another chance of happiness, then stop for a moment. Stop to sit down and quietly ask your heart, whom am I still angry with? What am I still not letting go of? You do not need anyone to save you. You just need to stop harming yourself anymore. By resenting, you are keeping forever the old energy. By remembering, you are imprisoning yourself in the past. By fearing, you are pushing happiness far away. Change the heart, then destiny will change. Change the way you love, then the person who comes will be different. No one comes to fill you up, but to walk along with you when you are already full. Remember, not only when someone loves you are you worthy of living, but when you love yourself, you have enough strength to receive another person to step in, not to fill, but to walk together. If today you are still alone, do not be sad. Blessing does not come when you call someone else's name, but comes when you know how to call your own name. Blessing does not wait in someone out there, but begins from the moment you sit down, breathe deeply and say, I forgive, I release, I return. And at that moment, the one who needs to come will come. Not early, not late, but exactly at the time you are peaceful enough to realize the one most worthy to walk with you for life is yourself. If you have ever loved, ever hurt, ever let go, then try writing an unsent letter. Send it to that person or to your past self, not to blame, but to close. Then look into the mirror and ask very gently, today, have I loved myself yet? That will be the place where we continue, with a heart lighter, more peaceful, and more complete. I will meet you there, in the light of a love that no longer has suffering. Dear friend, if you have silently listened until this point, then perhaps between us, it is no longer a storyteller and a listener, but is two people who once hurt, now walking side by side in a nameless journey, quietly, but very deep. Maybe you still have there a piece of love not yet closed. Maybe you still have tears lingering inside your chest and do not know where to release them. Maybe you are still living in a house full of laughter, but the heart is as cold as a room that has forgotten the sunlight. But dear friend, no one can suffer forever. And also, no one can love you fully if you yourself have not yet known how to embrace yourself. Every day you still breathe, still hear the Dharma, still know pain, is still a chance to transform. Do not hurry to look for another person to fill. Do not blame karma and then give up. Also, do not wait for someone to understand and then start to love yourself. Start from a very small thing. It is to wake up 10 minutes earlier to sit and breathe. It is to light an incense stick for your own heart to be peaceful before hoping someone else will change. It is to put down the phone, to embrace your heart in mindfulness. It is each night before sleep, call their name and say in your heart, I do not resent anymore. The journey does not begin from temples or scriptures. The journey begins from a moment you stop and realize you have suffered enough and enough heart to release. We do not need to become someone great. We only need to become gentle again, so as not to continue hurting each other. Have you ever seen your mother's eyes when she quietly looked out into the yard at late afternoon? Have you ever seen your father drink a glass of water, sit in deep thought, and no one knows how tired he was inside? All of those people are carrying suffering without knowing how to call its name. We are the ones more fortunate because we know pain. We know how to stop. We know how to practice. So then, please continue. No need fast. Only need steady, like the light every morning gently pouring through the window. If you have listened until here, please leave a word, even if only 3 words. I am still here, or share. Where are you now on your journey of letting go? Who is the person you once loved, the deepest, but had to leave? What do you still want to keep, and what are you ready to release? Please write it down, not to be answered, but to let your heart breathe, one time, very lightly, because sometimes only a single sharing can illuminate a person who is on the other side of despair. See you there, where we no longer search for someone to hold hands, but learn how to walk with the very light from our own heart. If possible, please close your eyes a little, breathe in, very deep, and breathe out, very slow. Then say to yourself, I have not lost anyone. I am only learning how to love myself better after the things that were not right. I am not sure you will remember all of what you have heard today. But if only one thing remains, then I hope it is gentleness with yourself. We will still meet again, not in tears, but in light. Goodbye to you, with a farewell that is not sad, but is a wish, peace, lightness, and enough blessing to live the rest of life in mindfulness. Part 8. Message. Closing the journey. Opening a new door of awakening. Light as a breath. You have not lost anyone. It is only that your soul is learning how to release an old debt. invite the audience to write an unsent letter to the one who once caused them suffering. Look into the mirror. Ask, today have I forgiven myself yet? Open the next video. The one who stays with me the longest is not the life partner, but is myself. There was one late afternoon at the end of the year, in a small temple in the suburban area. I sat beside a woman over 40. She held in her hand an old mala, her face calm like the lake surface after a storm, and told me a love story without an ending, but with a rebirth. She once loved him with all that a wife could give away, taking care of every meal, sacrificing every sleep, saving up every coin. But he always felt lacking, not enough love, not enough beauty, not enough understanding. Every day together was a silent contest. Who was wrong? Who was right? Who sacrificed more? Who was the one that should be loved more? Then one day, she collapsed. Not because he left, but because she realized she had never loved herself. That was the first morning she sat down, bowed to the Buddha, not to beg him to return, but to bow for herself, a woman who had exchanged her whole life, but forgot that she too was a living being needing to be loved. She told me, at that time, I no longer prayed for him to change. I only prayed that I would be peaceful enough not to turn love into a contest. And from then on, she began to practice. Every morning, bow 10 bows. Every evening, chant 1 round of mala, dedicate to him, not to make him come back, but to release all resentments in the heart. Strangely, when she stopped demanding, then he began to look back. When she no longer used tears to beg, but used silence to dedicate, then that once indifferent man slowly became a man who knew how to bow his head and apologize. Love, turns out, does not disappear. It only becomes transparent when no longer stained by ego. The greatest awakening in a marriage is not when both change at the same time, but it is when one person is clear enough not to turn old karma into new resentment. It is when one person dares to stop, lets go from the cycle of wounds, to bring both out of the invisible wheel of suffering. I have met many couples like that. Some divorced, then returned, not because they still loved, but because they had learned how to love anew. A love that is no longer, you must be as I want, but is, I understand what you have gone through. Some lived together but silent like strangers. Then one day, just because of one Dharma talk, both looked at each other like the first time and started again, with eyes knowing compassion, not demand anymore. A practitioner in love is not the one who meditates to escape suffering, but is the one who dares to sit still in the middle of anger, to look straight into the wound they are carrying and not throw it onto the other. Love, when awakened, does not need many words. A bowl of rice cooked in mindfulness, a gaze without judgment, a hand-holding without possessive purpose, all are Buddha Dharma living within daily life. Many people ask me, how to know if I have loved in the right way? I only smiled. When you no longer see suffering, but see your heart becoming brighter, lighter, and more grateful, then that is the sign of a love that has the light of awareness. Awareness is not breaking up, but is breaking up with resentment, not abandoning the other person, but abandoning the small ego that once forced the other to fill it. Do you know, in an old sutra, the Buddha once taught, if it cannot be transformed, then every relationship is a repeat of karma. And if successfully transformed, then karma becomes blessing. I have seen women who once cried out all their tears because of their husband's betrayal, after a few years of mantra, chanting, repentance bowing, their hearts shone like a candle, not because the husband came back, but because they had become people no longer dependent on anyone to live. I have seen men who once destroyed their marriage with their hands. Then when their mother died, he found in that cold hand a mala worn out because of chanting every night for him. He burst into tears. and from that day return to the Dharma path, quietly, humbly, with no one knowing. Buddha Dharma is not something lofty in temples. Buddha Dharma lives in every small act. When you choose silence instead of attack, choose patience instead of giving up, choose to look at the other with the light of understanding instead of the darkness of anger. Love is not wrong. Wrong is the way we love, when not healed enough. And when you begin to love with a heart that has understood, suffering, has gone through resentment, then you no longer love to be loved, but love to walk together. Love without suffering is love in awareness. And loving like that is a form of practice. How many times in life have you asked yourself, why do I love with all my heart, but still not happy? That question is not to blame anyone, but to invite you to look back, whether that love arose from gratitude or from fear. Many of us love as if clinging to each other to cover the empty spaces in the heart, to not feel lonely, to feel needed, loved, important. But do you know, love that begins from fear will sooner or later end in brokenness, while love that arises from a bright mind does not need to be held but still stays, does not need resentment but still peaceful. I once met an old lady, 82 years old, living with her husband who had lost memory for many years. Every morning, she still cooked porridge, fed him spoon by spoon, wiped each stain on his shirt. Someone asked, "He no longer knows who you are. Why do you still care like that?" She smiled, "Because I know who I am, and I am caring for a part of fate that I once owed." She did not love to be loved back. She loved because she had matured enough to see. Love is also a way of practice. It is an opportunity to cleanse what was not tolerant enough within herself. When love becomes companionship, then you will no longer need to control. You will no longer force the other to follow you, no longer hurt if they do not do what you want. Because you have understood, they are they, you are you, and fate, if enough, will stay by itself. A friend once told me, "I realized I was wrong when I kept demanding he understand me, while I had not yet understood myself." That sentence I remember forever. We keep waiting for another person to play the role of a doctor healing the inner self, while we ourselves are still full of unhealed scars. But true love does not demand anyone to be perfect, but is to grow together, to heal together. Do you remember the last time you held that person's hand, not to pull them toward you, but to silently send a blessing? Do you remember the last time you looked at that person, not to blame, but to say, "Thank you for coming and giving me a chance to cleanse myself through each pain"? That is the light of awakening. When our mind is bright, then every relationship will no longer be shackles, but a bridge. A bridge taking us from suffering to understanding. A bridge connecting from selfishness to compassion. A bridge connecting from a small ego to a heart that loves all. Love, when awakened, is no longer two people confronting, but two souls going through storms together, yet still keeping a flame. The other person is no longer mine. They are a companion, coming at the right time for us to see what we need to see. They may stay, they may leave, but the lesson is still there, quiet like breath, and shining bright like a lamp in the night. One day, you will sit in meditation, in a quiet room, hearing a bell sound echo through the window, and your heart suddenly feels light, because you no longer resent, no longer fear loss, no longer wait for anything. You are present, you are living, you are enough. And if someone asks you at that moment, do you still love that person? You will smile. Yes, but no longer as possession. Yes, like loving a flower. A flower may bloom, may fade, but its fragrance has already soaked into the heart. There was a woman, at 30 years old, once sat curled up in a small room. Beside her was the divorce paper, and eyes already dry because of crying too much. She once loved, once hoped, once thought that her marriage would be the final harbor, but then betrayal came like a cold knife, cutting off all trust. The husband she had loved for 10 years went with another woman, light as footsteps, leaving a party where one no longer felt joy. At that time, she thought she could not continue living. She once begged, once held on, once blamed God. Why unfair? Why let her love so much, but then receive such a painful ending? But then, a friend brought her to a meditation session. In that room, no one asked her what pain she had. No one told her to forget. Only breaths, even and deep. She heard the teacher say one sentence: "Do not try to step past suffering. Walk with it, and you will see it does not stay forever." From that day, she began the healing journey, slowly and silently. Every morning she woke up early, lit an incense, chanted Buddha's name. Every night, she wrote a piece of letter to herself, not to blame, but to embrace. She stopped asking, "Why did he leave me?" and began asking, how to not resent anymore. Time flowed like water over stone. 5 years later, she still lived alone. But that room now, full of light, had fresh flowers, had wind chimes, had the smell of warm tea. The woman once silently collapsed, now knew how to sit, breathing with herself, knew how to smile when looking out the window, knew how to say thank you when thinking of the past. And then, one day, when she no longer hoped to meet anyone, no longer needed anyone to come to fill her, he appeared. A man who had once broken too, but no longer carried wounds. He did not need to ask much, did not say flowery words. But in his eyes was presence, was silence, was a sky of peace she once dreamed of. They did not need promises, did not rush, just simply being together like two companions, stepping each step slow but steady. Many people asked, how to know you have met the right person? The answer is, when you no longer fear losing them, when you do not need them to fill your emptiness, but they come like a cool breeze, you are already peaceful enough to receive. That person does not come to change your emptiness, life. They come when you have already changed yourself. That is the deepest truth of blessed destiny. Blessing does not come from changing the person, but comes from changing the mind. When your mind is bright, you will naturally attract pure things. When your heart is full of gratitude, you will meet people who know how to cherish. There are people who spend their whole life chasing after a love, changing one person after another, only to then touch again the same pain, disappointment, hurt, not enough. But when you stop, turn inward, heal the child crying inside yourself, then even if the other person has not come, you already feel full. No one can save you if you do not save yourself first. No one can fill you if you do not learn how to embrace your own old wounds. No one can bring blessed destiny if you do not have enough blessing from your own consciousness. Therefore, do not rush to love when your heart is still torn. Do not hope someone else will heal when you have never sewn back the old wounds yourself. I write these things not as advice, but as someone who once walked through and turned back to look. Saw myself in the past, also once panicked in pain, also once held onto a hand that had pulled away, also once thought losing one person was losing the whole world. But you know what? When you learn how to sit down, breathe deep, and not run away from pain anymore, you will see the world does not leave you. Only you had left yourself. And when returning, everything will be different. Love will be a gift, no longer a runaway. That person, if coming, will no longer make you tremble, but will help you more peaceful. Believe that one day, true blessed destiny will come, not for you to cling, but for you to accompany, not for you to sacrifice until empty, but for you to bloom together in peace. And if you ask, when will that person come? Then the answer is when you no longer ask. Because at that time, you have already met yourself. And that is the most important person you need to wait for. Namo Amitabha Buddha. Perhaps, after everything that has been told, has been remembered, has been cried, you will sit again, alone. Like that girl years ago, once thought she could not step through the pain, once thought that a lost love was the loss of an entire life. But no, you have not lost anything at all. You are only letting go of the things that are no longer right with your soul. You are only learning a great lesson, that love is not to cling, but to understand, then release, then grow. How many times have you asked, why did that person leave? Why, after so much love, are you the one hurt the deepest? Why are you so good? But happiness does not stay with you. Maybe there is no answer. But there is one thing certain. You deserve a love that does not hurt you. No one comes into your life by accident. That person comes for you to realize the part of yourself still weak, for you to see you once needed someone so much that you lost yourself, for you to hurt, but learn the way to revive, for you to break, but know how to embrace the pieces in your heart. Have you walked through that journey yet? Or are you still lost inside the old question, why did they abandon me? If still, then this is the time you need to look back, not to blame, but to forgive, not for the other person, but for yourself. Try, just once, to forgive the times you were too naive, the nights you cried all your tears for someone not worthy anymore, the days you lost yourself only to hold something that did not belong to you. Forgiveness, not to forget, but to not resent anymore. Because when your heart still resents, then even if the new person is so good, you will still look at them through the old wound. Even if they truly love you, you will still doubt, as the way you were once abandoned, a heart not healed, then blessing will not come. A heart still resentful, then any destiny also turns into karma. So if you are waiting for another love, another person, another happiness, then please stop for a little while. Stop to sit down and quietly ask your heart, who am I still angry at? What have I still not released? You do not need anyone to save you. You only need to not harm yourself anymore. By resenting, you are holding on to old energy. By remembering, you are imprisoning yourself in the past. By fearing, you are pushing happiness away. Change your heart, then destiny will change. Change the way you love, then the person who comes will be different. No, one comes to fill you, but to accompany you when you are already full. Remember, not when someone loves you. You are worthy to live. But when you love yourself, you have the strength to welcome another person to step in, not to fill, but to walk together. If today you are still alone, do not be sad. Blessing does not come when you call someone else's name, but comes when you know how to call your own name. Blessing does not wait in someone out there, but begins from the moment you sit down, breathe deeply, and say, I forgive, I release, I return. And at that moment, the one who needs to come will come. Not early, not late, but just at the right moment when you are peaceful enough to recognize the one most worthy to walk with you for a lifetime is yourself. If you have once loved, once hurt, once let go, then please try to write a letter, not sent. Send it to that person or to your former self, not to blame, but to close it. Then look into the mirror and ask very gently, today, have I loved myself yet? That will be the place where we step forward, with a heart lighter, more peaceful, and more fulfilled. I will meet you there, in the light of a love that no longer has suffering. My dear friend, if you have quietly listened until here, then perhaps between us, it is no longer storyteller, listener. but two people who once hurt, now walking side by side in an unnamed journey, silently, but very deep. Perhaps you still have a love not yet closed. Perhaps you still have tears stuck inside your chest without knowing where to pour them. Perhaps you are still living in a house full of laughter, but your heart is cold like a room forgotten by the sunlight. But my friend, no one can suffer forever, and no one can love you completely if you still do not know how to embrace yourself. Each day you are still breathing, still able to hear the Dharma, still able to feel pain, is still a chance to transform. Do not rush to find someone else to fill you. Do not blame karma to then give up. And do not wait for someone to understand before you love yourself. Begin from something very small. Wake up 10 minutes earlier to sit and breathe. Light an incense stick for your heart to be at peace before hoping anyone else will change. Put the phone down to embrace your heart in mindfulness. Each night before sleep, call that person's name and say in your heart, I no longer resent. The journey does not begin from temples or scriptures. The journey begins from one moment you stop and see you have suffered enough and enough heart to release. We do not need to become someone great. We only need to become gentle again, to not keep hurting each other. Have you ever seen your mother's eyes when quietly looking out to the yard in the late afternoon? Have you ever seen your father drink a glass of water, sit in silence, and no one knows how tired he was inside? All those people, all carry suffering without knowing how to call its name. We are the ones more fortunate because we know pain, we know to stop, we know to practice. So then, please continue. Not quickly, only steadily, like the light each morning gently pours through the window. If you have listened until here, please leave a word, even just 3 words. I am still here. Or share. Where are you on your journey of letting go? Who is the person you once loved the deepest, but had to leave? What do you still want to keep, and what are you ready to release? Please write it down. Not to be answered, but for your heart to breathe once, very gently, because sometimes just a sharing can already light up someone on the other side of despair. I will meet you there, where we no longer seek someone to hold hands, but learn to walk with the light of our own heart. If possible, please close your eyes for a while. Breathe in, very deep, and breathe out, very slow. Then say to yourself, I have not lost anyone. I am only learning to love myself better after the things not right. I am not sure you will remember everything you have heard today, but if only one thing remains, then may it be the gentleness with yourself. We will meet again, not in tears, but in the light. Goodbye to you, with a farewell not sad, but as a wish, peace, lightness, and enough blessing to live the rest of life in mindfulness.